Hi everyone, this video is part of Macquarie University's coding tutorials, and at this point in our series we can finally say that our environment is set and we can move on to talking about fundamental computer science concepts. In this video, we'll be talking about classes and objects in Java, touching on the difference between primitives and objects, and look at how we can visualize our classes using UML diagrams. Java is a language that follows the object-oriented programming principles, and so you may hear it referred to as an object-oriented programming language. There are a lot of underlying concepts related to object-oriented programming that are beyond the scope of this course, so for our purposes we just need to know that we often create classes that act as a template for us to create objects. These objects then carry around their own variables and their own methods that we can call on them according to the class rule. For example, let's take the string hello. This is a string object made from the string class. If we want to find its length, we use the length method. This is because inside the string class, a length method has been created, so that whenever we create or use a string, we can find its length. In summary, think of a class as a template or blueprint for creating objects. It defines the properties or variables and behaviors that the objects created from it will have. Let's take for example cars. All cars have a model, a make, year created, its current speed, and the number of seats. In order to get a car, we need to specify these aspects of the car. We can also do things to the car, such as start the engine, turn off the engine, accelerate, and get it serviced. Notice that at the top here we have things a car has, and at the bottom we have actions or things we can do to the car. We can summarize what an object is by saying it is an instance of a class. It has its own values for the properties defined in the class, which we will call instance variables, and can use the methods defined in the class to interact with other objects. It's important to note that the types of classes we are talking about here are not designed to be run, meaning they do not have a main method. Typically when we make a program that does have a main method, we will be creating objects in that main method, and those objects will be made from the template classes that have been created. Think of this like when you create an array or string in the main method and you operate on it. The string class itself cannot run as a program. Now, because we'll hear these terms often, we need to understand the difference between primitive types and objects. Simply put, in Java there are two data types, primitives and objects. Primitives are the basic data types like int, double, boolean, etc., and they are stored directly in memory and have a fixed size. Objects, on the other hand, are created from classes. They have a variable size and can have multiple attributes, which are their own variables, and methods, which are their own functions. This is why strings and arrays are not primitives. They have a variable size, and we can dictate how long a string is, or how many items an array has, and we can call methods on them. Now, in object-oriented programming, it is common to use UML diagrams to represent the structure of a class. UML stands for Unified Modeling Language and is a standard way of representing classes and their relationships. One popular website for creating UML diagrams is yuml.me. We'll be using this website to create a UML diagram for a simple class called car, continuing on with our example earlier on in this video. First, let's go to the site yuml.me and select Draw UML Diagram. Now, we want to delete all the pre-existing text. We'll go through what we need to write step by step, and note that we don't need to remember the syntax for the most part, but it will be handy to come back to if we want to document the structure of our classes. First, we want to start with a square bracket and our class name. Then we need to put a pipe to show that the class name is finished. This is the same character we use when creating an OR statement in Java. Now, we can list our variables, separating them with semicolons. If we want to specify the type of the variable, we say the variable name, colon, and then write the data type. For example, here we want our car to have a model, and the model will be a string, so we write model, colon, string, and use a semicolon to show that we will add more variables. Let's do this for the rest of the variables. Now that the variables are complete, we need to add another pipe character. Now let's list the functions using the same syntax but adding parentheses to the end of the function name. So for example, to start the engine, the function name will be startEngine, write in the opening and closing parentheses, write a colon so we can determine the data type, and make the return type void. Use a semicolon to begin the next function, stop engine, parentheses, colon, and void again. Semicolon, accelerate, and now this function could be void, although we might ask it to return some sort of information, such as the speed we end up at after accelerating, so we can give it an int return type. Finally, we can make the service function void too. It might take a couple of seconds for the diagram to refresh, but once it has, our car diagram clearly shows the structure of our class. I highly recommend that you practice creating your own classes using UML diagrams based on other real-life examples, such as animals or university subjects. In this video, we have covered the basics of classes and objects in Java. We have also talked about the difference between primitives and objects and seen how UML diagrams can be used to represent the structure of a class. As we work on more concrete examples, we'll start seeing how these concepts translate in the code. In the next video, we'll look at defining a class using a car example and creating its instance variables. See you there!